You say you're fine, but I can see right through. You're holding your secrets for way too long. This can't keep going on. With every lie, they keep on hurting you, getting away with everything they do. This can't keep going on. Oh, we're gonna find them, and I'm gonna fight for you. They better start hiding. We'll be running with the lions, lions. We'll be running with the lions, lions. They can't run, they can't hide. We won't stop until they're down. We'll be running with the lions, lions.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gloves Off. I'm your host, Dr. Kalpana Sundar, and every week on this show, I interview a very special guest. And each week, my guests are people who have really shown up authentically in the world, are doing the things that are courageous, and often they have shifted courses from something that they were originally doing because they found a purpose, something that really gives them ambition and goal and fire to live every day of their life. So that being said, that's the premise of the show of Gloves Off. So for those of you who have been watching, I welcome you back. I'm thrilled that you're here again. And for those of you who are new, welcome, and I hope you like the show. So this week, I have a very interesting guest. Her name is Martha, and I'm going to try to say it. I literally said her name 10 times before we got on air, but I'm going to do it again, and I hope I do it right. So it's Martha Kartaoui, and apparently it's Moroccan, and I find that fascinating. So a wonderfully beautiful lady. I was actually introduced to her by a mutual friend, and she has such an amazing story. She was actually in a cult. So although I have interviewed a lot of guests on this show, I don't think I've ever known anybody who was in a cult. So I read her book. I have it right here. She was kind enough to send it to me. So Glory, Going All In. And I have to say it was quite an emotional experience for me just to really understand what she went through as a child growing up in this cult and just how hard it was to break free from that kind of life. So anyway, before I get into all the rest of the story, I wanted to tease you into it a little bit. I'm going to introduce our sponsor, Elevated CPA. And as always, we appreciate their sponsorship every week. All right, welcome back. So, well, as I was saying, Martha has quite an incredible story. So after all those things that she dealt with in that cult, she obviously made something different out of her life. And now she focuses on wellness and spreading love and light into the world. She travels, she speaks, she's an author. She really does a lot of amazing things. So let's bring her on and talk to her about her amazing story. Well, hello, Martha. Welcome to Gloves Off.
Thank you so much for having me. And you did a great job. You said it right.
Oh, thank God. I was like, I'm going to forget. I said it like so many times. Martha Kartaoui. I was like, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it.
You got it. You got it. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so great to talk to you. And I mean, I was so touched by your book. I was grateful that you sent it to me because I think you can talk about these things, but you will really feel it when you read a book. So I was really, I don't even know where to begin with your story. So, I mean, I think what really touched me was that, your parents brought you into this cult. I think this was the thing that the whole time I was reading was shocking to me, that your parents never thought that this wasn't a good situation for you. And I wonder how this brainwashing occurs in cults so that people don't even think that this might not be a good thing. So I think that's the first question I have to ask you.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a fair question, right? Everybody wants to know, like, how did your parents allow these things to happen? And the truth is that my parents were as brainwashed as I was. Yes, I was born into it, so I knew nothing else. My parents joined it when they were in their late 20s. So they had life experiences outside of the cult. I did not, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But with that being said, how does it happen to smart people, right? How do you join something like this? And because my parents are both well educated, my parents are both very successful. They both had careers on their own. Like they were not, they weren't a enigma for like cults, but they were smart. They were very smart. So how do they get involved in these types of things? And the answer is, they were searching. They were looking for something that was bigger than themselves. They were searching to fill a hole, to fill a void that they hadn't had up to that point. They were free thinking hippies and they were just looking. They were searching. It was the late 60s, early 70s. And there were all these evangelistic movements happening during that time. And got swept up in the charisma of the leader. They got swept up in the idea of community. They got swept up in the idea of belonging to something that was special. They got swept up in the idea of becoming like helpful for each other, right? It all started out with good intentions. But what happened is eventually the members put the leader, what I call cult man, on a proverbial pedestal. And then ego got involved. And that turned into what ended up being the demise of so many hearts and souls of people that had belonged to it. But it started out very cohesive, very loving, very, taking care of one another, rising up together as part of this like secret society, right? Like it didn't start out as, physical abuse and sexual abuse and financial devastation. It didn't start out as any of those things. Those things happened so very slowly that by the time they started happening, my parents were already too far in. And they had already been, promised everlasting salvation. And everlasting salvation sometimes comes with this, you think that it comes with all of these pressures and rituals and rules, and that they just got sucked into it.
Wow. Wow. Well, I have to say that's a great answer. And I want to just touch on that for just another couple of minutes, because I think it's an important differentiating factor. Because, well, first of all, you said they were searching. And I think it's very important to recognize that anyone is probably going to be in a bad situation if they're searching, if they don't have all their wits about them. So that being said, I have also always been searching for a tribe, a community to, and all these things, because they make us feel so good. And I've never gotten involved in anything like what you have, but there have been times where I've joined something and I've often asked myself, this feels a little like a cult. And, again, not to the extreme that you're describing in your book and all the things you've experienced, but there was this. So I looked it up one day, and now I have to remember what I read. What the difference between tribe and a cult was, if I remember correctly, is just that free will. Obviously there's control in a cult. And I recently went to a retreat, and it felt that way to me, because there was a lot of control about who shows up. You need to be here every minute of the day. And I thought, I'm an adult. I don't need to do anything and I'm paying to be here. So if I don't want to show up because I need something else, that's life. So again, for me, that's the differentiating factor when there's no free will and there's a large amount of control. So I just want to put that out there to the audience so that they're recognizing when something could be taking a different direction.
Spot on. So the two differentiating factors, one is control and the other is isolation. When a group tries to isolate you from the outside or from family members or from friends or from anything that you feel aligned with, that it should be a huge red flag, right? So the control, the lack of free will, the rules, right? And just like you just spoke about, I had an experience like that a few months ago where I went to this retreat and it was so structured. And I was like, I am a 45-year-old woman. And if I don't want to do this at 7 a.m. and stay up till midnight doing this, I shouldn't have to, right? Like but you also feel like you don't want to let the collective down by not participating or to devalue what's going on. But at the end of the day, like if it doesn't feel good for me and it doesn't feel aligned with who I am, if I'm paying to be there, that feels cultish. So, and I do come from that background. So
and I'm glad you agree.
Flashing.
Yeah, that's how I felt in this situation. I just had these red flags just popping up all over the place because I was told to be there at 7 and I didn't want to because whatever was happening at 7 was of no interest to me. And then like, it's almost like we were encouraged to stay till the very end, which was often 9, 10 o'clock at night. And I'm sorry, that's not for me. That's just not for me.
Exactly.
So I think that's a really good point. But, you know, obviously these situations, we weren't mistreated. We were fed. We were allowed to go to the bathroom. I mean, my heart just broke thinking about children or even adults, frankly, just having to endure these circumstances. So Cult Man, as you call him in the book, he was just a regular guy. I guess he was from India, which makes me sick because I'm from India. And I was like, oh, don't want to be related to anybody that's like this. But, you know, so he probably didn't start with the intention of doing this, but power gets to people. And it's probably where things went south. But as things transformed, there was physical abuse, there was sexual abuse, I remember there was one point in the book where you didn't eat for, was it a month? Because you were told you were 5 months. Oh my God. I think I blocked that out because I just couldn't even. 5 months. You were Tang? Was it Tang that you were given?
Yeah.
5 months because you were told you were fat.
Yeah. I needed to cleanse from all of the things I had done as a teenager, you know, boys and drugs and cigarettes and alcohol. But yeah, I was on a cleanse.
Wow. That is just unbelievable. My heart just goes out to you. I honestly don't know how somebody even goes through those kind of things because, you know, I remember even in there, you were thinking you were going to eat something. There was one point where you thought you were going to get food and then you were removed from the food. Just that feeling of almost having something after waiting. So, I mean, I just can't even imagine. So I think my question here after saying all that is, how does a human being endure those kinds of just indecencies? I don't even know whether the word to describe that, and actually come out of this and create good in the world and not hold that darkness in their hearts.
That's a deep question. That's what
I love to do is go deep fast.
Yeah. And the answer to that is there's not an acorn version of that answer. Like I have to explain. So when these things were happening to me, I really feel like I disconnected to the very being that they were happening to, because you cannot endure day after month, after week, after year of this type of abuse and trauma and then come out like, all right, it's over. Let's start over our new life, right? That doesn't happen because our body keeps track of everything that we experience, mind, body, and spirit. As you've probably read the book, Body Keeps the Score. Mm-hmm. Your body keeps the score of everything that happens to you. So in order for me to survive, I disconnected from the very being of who I was. So when I got out, or when I escaped at almost 26 years old, I had no identity. I didn't know who Martha Glory was. I didn't have any self-awareness. I didn't have any self-love. I didn't have any propensity for who I was going to be when I got out, because I had disconnected for so many years. So now I get out into this big, scary world that I know nothing about. I am ill prepared for, because I'm an almost 26-year-old adult with no money, nowhere to go, am on the run, right? And now I have to figure out how to start over life. And often, you know the situation you've been in, and no matter how uncomfortable or how scary or how demoralizing it is, that's all you know. So there was so many times when I'm trying to navigate this new world and I'm going, I don't know, I don't even know where to start, right? Because the only thing I'm used to is somebody controlling my every breath. Right. Somebody controlling when I go to the bathroom, when I take a shower, what time I get up, who's going to drive me to school, who's going to take me to work. Like, all of those things were structured and done for me. I didn't have to think on my own. I wasn't given the autonomy to make decisions on my own. That's how structured my life was. So when everything is controlled, you don't have free will. You don't have free thinking. You don't have the ability to reason of like, okay, what's the best thing for Martha to do right now, right? So the only thing I knew how to do was work. I had a great work ethic because work was my escape. So as soon as I got out, I got a job and I just poured my very being into becoming the best employee possible. And with that work ethic, right, you get an instantaneous gratification of like your employer going, good job. Okay, raise. Okay, next position. And I did that. Like, I rose the ranks in corporate very, very quickly because I had this instinctual work ethic that served me well. But that was just a Band-Aid for all of the other things going on that I was running from. And so eventually those things start to catch up, and then you have to face them because the body keeps the score.
Wow. Well, I had a feeling you were going to answer in that way, just because obviously as a physician, I've studied trauma responses and whatnot. It is our escape mechanism. People who have dealt with sexual trauma, physical abuse, emotional abuse, and all of the things that you've gone through, that's typically the response, leave the body. So how do you figure out how to come back into the body and be connected with yourself? When did that happen for you?
So for me, that happened when all of my worlds collided and my physical body was breaking down, literally breaking down. I'd been out of the cult for about 5 years. I was in a happy marriage for the first time. I was safe. I was, my husband loved me. My husband supported me. My husband was the first person I ever became fully transparent with and honest with about my past. And he loved me in spite of it, right? But because I was safe for the very first time in my whole 27 years of life, when I got married to him, my life started imploding because I had never been safe. I didn't know how to be safe. It created chaos because it's the only thing I knew. So I was going back and regressing to these old patterns that had been the only thing that I had done for my entire life, which is fight or flight. So I created chaos in my marriage. I created chaos and just always needed a reason to be running because that's all I knew. It's all I knew how to do. And so eventually my worlds just collided and my husband's at his wit end and I'm at my wit's end with my body because now I have chronic migraines. I'm just obese. I am way overweight. My immune system is devastated. My nervous system is in a wreck. My fibromyalgia, like I get this list of diagnoses. And as a doctor, you know that like, you look at a person and the person that's in front of you, like you look at them with your scope of practice. And so I'm being bounced around the healthcare system and I'm getting one diagnosis after another. And but nobody's looking at the full being of who Martha Glory is and saying, this is just an abused, traumatized little girl that needs somebody to just love her and help her through this. Like, nobody sees that. So I bounce and bounce and bounce and bounce. And eventually how this all stopped was I had a class. I'm a therapeutic massage therapist, and I was in a class, and it talked about somatics, and it talked about how our body keeps the score and how trauma is stored on a cellular level. And I was like, what? That's me. That's that. They're talking about me.
You're like,
and
the light bulb just went off.
It was the light bulb moment of my life, because then I was like, okay, well, if that's the case, there's help for me. Like, there's help for me. And so I started doing my own research. I started doing modalities that are not paid for by insurance. I started talking to other practitioners that are not mainstream. I went to Eastern medicine. I went down the holistic route. I went naturopathic route. Like, I tried all of these other things that began to serve me and began to unravel this just ball of yarn or an onion or whatever you want to, the layering. I just had to start peeling back the layers and get back to the essence of who I am, who God created me to be, who God says I am, before all of these things changed and I disconnected from the very essence of who I was. And so through all these different modalities and through that year, those almost 12 years of this healing journey that I've been on, I re-identified with Martha Glory. And when I finally did that, that was so powerful to be able to look in the mirror and say, dang it, you made it. You made it to the other side. You've been through some hard stuff. You will go through more hard stuff, but you are an amazing soul. You have so much to give. You have so much to do, and you're not going to stay stuck in this. You're too good for this. You're worthy of healing. You're worthy of change. You're worthy of changing the world, because you're going to do the work required in order to do so.
Wow. Well, you bring up so many important points in the things that you just said. Like, for example, what you said about medicine not really giving you a real diagnosis. They're just looking at this symptom, that's this symptom. It is one of my major gripes about medicine right now. And that's why I kind of left medicine, because I just didn't think that's the way things should be done. And I really believe that true medicine involves using Western medicine, Eastern medicine, alternative therapies, and anything and everything that could potentially help a person be whole and healthy again. Whereas in Western medicine, we're stuck with big pharma and et cetera, et cetera. I always felt that there should be a marriage of East-West alternative and all of those things. So it's great that you had the understanding to start researching other things. I have to tell you now, in my life, I don't think I hardly ever go to Western medicine. It's rare. And I go to all kinds of other modalities before I would go to Western medicine, which is crazy because I'm a doctor. But I love that you found a solution, a way back to yourself, a way to feel whole and healthy again. And then I also love the point you made about feeling safe. Your body, your essence, your soul at that moment did not know the feeling of safety. So it created as much more chaos as it could. And these are important things for us to know, because we do recreate our traumas if we don't heal from them.
Yeah, it's the cycle that had to be broken for me, because I was so scared to have children, because I was like, I'll be damned if I do this to my kids, right?
Right.
And I think I intuitively understood, like, I can't create this again. Like, if I'm not healthy, how can I have children? How can I, it was a fear point, obviously, but also it was the reality that, yes, we will continue to recreate that. And now that I understand energy, and I'm an energy healer, and I'm a practitioner, a therapeutic practitioner, like, there's my scope and my mind is so much more open, and I understand how interconnected everything is. right? Energetically, we recreate cycles, generation after generation, right? And if we don't break that and we don't heal that, we will energetically create it again. Same thing spiritually, emotionally, physically, nervous system wise. So for me, I wanted to be the end of this. Yes, the majority of my family are out of the cult. I still have a sister that's still there, but there's eight of us kids are out and my parents are out, and we're all recreating our lives on the outside now. I've been out for almost 20 years, but there are still things that come up within my own family dynamics that could trigger me because we all haven't done the same work, but we all didn't have the same experience either. My experience is completely different from any of my other siblings because I lived in the compound. I was chosen. So my experience is completely different, but the shared experience of the cult is the same. We were all controlled in the same way. We were all right. So there's things that are still shared. And so as we are all navigating our own personal journey, we're also navigating a collective journey. And so I have taken on the role of being kind of the leading force in my own family. And I've been so blessed to see as I've healed how that healing has rippled out within my own nuclear family. It doesn't mean that bad stuff doesn't happen, right? Like,
of course.
I got divorced from the man that loved and adored me and was my biggest support system and my biggest cheerleader and all those things. But as I healed, I realized I wasn't in alignment with that any longer. And I had to set myself free from that. I got out of corporate America. That was no longer in alignment with who I was, no matter how much money I was making. I wanted to serve the people. And you can't serve the people when you're worried about reimbursement rates of the insurance companies and you're worried about, target numbers. And I wanted to serve people. And so I had to separate myself. And that's what I have found is one of the most important lessons on this healing journey is that just because we're doing this self-help work or the self-development work or the self-growth work, it doesn't mean that hard stuff's not going to happen or bad stuff's not going to happen. Exactly. It just gives us the tools to navigate it in a more healthy and conducively, healthier way, right? It doesn't mean that bad stuff's not going to happen. So I've still gone through my share of hard things since I've been on this healing journey, but I have the tools. I have the tools to get back up more quickly. I have the tools that tell me I will never separate from myself again. And intuitively, if it doesn't feel aligned with who I am, then I can't go forward. It stops me in my tracks because I am in a true physical, emotional, spiritual alignment with my path, with my purpose, with who God says I am, right?
I love that phrase, by the way, with who God says I am, because that's the only one that matters, right? And also, I think a really good point to bring up is when a human being is truly in alignment with themselves, they know who they are, they know their true essence. I believe it is impossible for them to become part of a cult. I mean, I think, I don't know if you agree with that, but I
100%.
Because that person is so aligned with themselves and their own inner being, their highest self, et cetera, God, however you want to phrase it. But that's what I think separates the people who wind up going into these things and don't, because there's a strong sense of self. And I think cults prey on people that don't have that. You
cannot intuitively be your highest self in a cult because you won't, they won't be able to take your identity from you. They won't be able to brainwash you into things that aren't in alignment with you. So no, they prey on the people that are searching. They prey on the people that don't have purpose. They're preying on the people that are looking for something that needs to be filled, a void. Excuse me, a void or something that just feels empty. That's the people that fall into these, claws of a cult.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. Now, I'm curious because you mentioned you have one family member still in the cult. Do you keep in contact with her?
We're not allowed.
You're not allowed. Okay, so you don't even know what's going on. That must be gut-wrenching.
Yeah,
but so, everybody,
just like we talked about earlier, like isolation is a huge thing when it comes to cults. And Growing up, I wasn't allowed to know my extended family that was outside of the cult.
Right.
And so now that we're outside of the cult, she's not allowed to commune with us or to conversate with us, because that would be against the rules. And, God forbid that she would speak to us and then we would convince her that,
right, to leave or something. Yeah.
So they can't allow that.
I want to talk a little bit about your, how you help people with your wellness and healing practices. So do you only help people in a cult, or do you help everybody and anybody and everybody? I mean, so who are the people that you're helping, and how exactly are you helping them?
So, first of all, my healing journey in itself is how I help people, because I believe that if you haven't gone through it, you can't resonate with the person that has been, through things, right? But the truth is trauma, big T, little t, pain, it's all relevant, but irrelevant when it comes to how we deal with it. So the people that I help, I'm a trauma-informed coach. I'm a spiritual mentor. I'm a keynote speaker. I do a lot of things, but how I help is to help them peel back the layers of who they are at their essence, right? Take away the things that have happened to them, give them a safe space to share those things and to hold that sacred space for them while they dismantle this person that they've created in order to be safe. Take those pieces and hold the space and keep them in that space, while they do that, and support them and offer them resources and offer them guidance while they get and do the hard work to get back to the core of who they are and who God says they are. And then they find their power. Then they find their purpose. Then they find their true essence. And when they find their true essence, the healing becomes very quick, because they're like, oh, that's what that means, right? That's why I've done this for so many years. That's why I end up in bad relationships. That's why I don't know how to do well with money. Whatever it is, it's all connected. It's all connected. So when we are off kilter or not in harmony, body, mind, and spirit, our whole life is off kilter. No matter how hard we try to put energy in one direction, when you're off kilter and you're off balance, I don't like balance because there's never a true balance in anything. It's more harmony, right? You have to be in harmony with yourself, with your intuition, with your highest self, with your mind, body, and spirit, right? That's what we try to get to. That's like the pinnacle point. And when we can do that, and that's how I help my clients. Like, how do we get back to the essence of who you are? Regardless if they believe in God or not, there's still an essence of who you were created to be. Like, who, like universe, your mom and dad, whatever it is, like, who were you created to be? And how do we get back to that point and we let all of the other stuff go? But not only letting it go, you have to heal through it and from it in order to move forward.
Yeah, that's so important. And I believe that every human being knows deep down inside, whether they choose to listen to it or not at that very moment, who they were meant to be. And we all get off track at some point in our life, but I know that in the times of my life where I've gotten off track, there was always this little voice inside of me that really did know where I was supposed to be and who I was supposed to be, and that I wasn't there at that moment.
I love that you say that. But the thing is that if you're never asked the question, how do you know?
That's
what I find with my clients is that if I don't ask these questions, like, who do you feel you were meant to be? What really sets your heart on fire? Like, what brings you joy when you think, like, if you're never asked the question and you've never had the autonomy to really think about those things regarding yourself, because you're busy being a mom or a dad, or you're busy whatever, right? Making money or whatever, you've busied yourself with other things, and you've never looked at yourself in that way and said, who is Martha Glory? Right? Like, who am I? And if you're never given the space or that question, how do you know?
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And obviously every one of us has had a different life experience. And because of that, if you've had a particularly traumatic life experience, you may have never thought about those things, So it just goes to show you what you don't think about, because I didn't have a particularly traumatic childhood. So, I had the space to wonder who I could be and all those things, and know that, oh, I'm off kilter here, or this is not me or whatnot. But I feel like trauma really, if you're dealing with trauma, I can't even imagine what that probably takes up all the space, and you probably don't have time to think about anything else. Definitely.
No. And that's a really great point. Like growing up, you said you didn't have a horrible childhood, but you probably imagined your wedding, or you probably imagined what you would be when you grew up, or you probably imagined, something, right?
Yeah.
I didn't imagine anything past the moment, because I was told what I would be when I grew up. I was told which school to go to. I was told what to eat. I was told what to wear. I was told, like, I never envisioned a wedding. I never like conceptualized being a bride, or what that would feel like, or what I wanted that to feel like. So when I did get married, I was like, I don't have an opinion. Like, let me find a dress that fits, and I'll get married in my sister's backyard, and that'll be good enough. Like, I had no like imagination of like what it could have looked like. Now, like, if I, hopefully one day I'll remarry, like, now I know what I want. I know what I deserve and what I'm worthy of. And I will only do that, right? Like, and that looks very different than the backyard wedding, that like barbecue style. Like, that's just not me anymore. I've outgrown that, because now I do have the autonomy to say, what does Martha want? What does Martha like? It's a totally different way to think about it, because I never had the option or the opportunity to think about those things.
So true. It's so true. And this, so much of why I do this show is really to help people understand other perspectives. And this is why, I'm bringing my perspective, because I didn't have to worry about these things. So I don't, I can't even imagine not wondering what I was going to be when I grew up, or my wedding and all those things. They just were natural parts of my day, So it is just such a different way of being, and it's so hard. And I just really love that you're on the other side of this, living a joyous, prosperous life and contributing to others' lives. But I love, there was one section in the book, like, just to show that you were in many ways like a really normal kind of teenager, where you would like change clothes. I think there was a section where you change clothes and wear like skirts, or I forget what it was exactly, but you had some drab kind of outfits that you had to wear, and you weren't allowed to cut your hair, right? They had to be longer, pulled. I forget what it was, the details, but there was a very conformist attitude of your style of clothing. And then I think once you got away from the cult one time, you cut your hair and you had different clothes. So I was like, okay, see, there's still like a normal teenager in there.
Yeah. No, I definitely went through a rebellious stage where I didn't think like, oh, poor me, the cult is horrible, right? Because I didn't know it was, but I was a teenager. I wanted to fit in. I went to public school. I wanted the cult's uniform was button-down blouses with long skirts, our hair pulled back in a bun, no makeup, no jewelry, couldn't cut our hair. And so when I became a teenager, I was like, well, if I cut my hair this much, nobody will notice, because I can still put it up at home or when I go to the compound, right? Like, so I did things just to make me feel, and yes, I would put pants and shorts underneath my skirt, and I would walk out of the house, and then I would take them off in the front of my S10 and put them behind my seat, go to school all day, come back up the driveway, put them back on, and go back in the house. Like, I did that for a couple of years. And that was part of the reason why Cult Man put me on such a restricted cleanse, is because like I had to pay for all of those sins, right? All of those things that I did being a normal teenager, right? Like, yes, I went a little buck wild with boys and with drugs, trying drugs and alcohol and things like that. But like overall, I just had a regular teenage experience, And I think because I was so controlled, that the little bit of liberty that I found, being a 16-year-old that was able to drive a car and go to public school, like I just kind of went off the deep end because I didn't know what it was like to have a little bit of freedom. And so I didn't know how to handle it like a normal person. I just kind of went off the deep end. And I did the same thing when I came home from the cult after escaping, as I went off the deep end, like I have lots of stories, but yeah, eventually I had to realize those things didn't serve me either.
So it's interesting because that part I can relate to very well, because although I didn't have a traumatic childhood, I had parents that were immigrants who just came to the United States. And, I'm the firstborn, I'm a daughter, and my God, the amount of control over everything was pretty insane. I mean, I wasn't in a cult, but I had Indian parents, and there was a lot of similarities in a way. I was only allowed to use the phone at certain times when they were watching me, and, I wasn't allowed to go out very much. They were just so strict. So I was very rebellious growing up, and I had a theory, and, luckily I was able to imagine what life would be like when I had children. And I said to I had a little black notebook of all the things that my parents did to me that I'm not going to do to my kids. I literally wrote them all down when I was a teenager, and I swore I wasn't going to do it. Now, I did some of the things that I swore I wouldn't do, but the one big thing that I did not do is control my children in those ways. I actually really just gave them guidelines and allowed them to make their own mistakes. And to be honest with you, I wasn't sure which was the right way, what my parents did or what I did. But in retrospect, I see that my kids were basically coming to me with things and problems and concerns they had. I mean, they probably didn't come to me with everything, but they came to me with a lot, and at least the important things. And to be honest, they still do. So that opened up that sort of communication. Now, in retrospect, I mean, honestly, I never go to my parents about anything. I mean, I have some cursory, superficial conversations, but they're not the people I go to. So it's interesting how those relationships develop so differently because of control. So we see control in cults and families and relationships. So, I want people to know in our audience that it's not just a cult where you see these things. You do see them in the real world in different ways.
So the big difference that I learned as I was raising children is structure and control are two very different things. Mm-hmm. And kids thrive in structure, not control, because structure can still have autonomy. They can still have free will, right? Structure creates the guidelines and the perimeters to keep them safe and to keep them within a moral ethic, compass, right? The control is where we deviate into a cult versus structure. Like, I think that in our jobs, right, we can thrive in structure. We often feel suffocated by control. I felt that in corporate, and I'm sure you did as well. Like you feel suffocated when you're taking your free will and you're told how you have to do certain things and how you're supposed to meet certain things. But structure creates it with autonomy. Creates, I think, success.
I agree. I think that's a beautiful way to put it, because there are two very, very different things. And I want to actually, because it's funny how fast time goes when I'm enjoying conversations. So I want to talk a little bit as we're talking about the cult and all that. Let's talk about this, what you're up to, Cult X that you told me about. I'm excited to dive into that.
Yeah, so I am creating this platform called Cult X, and it's cult-x.org. And what it'll be is a community for survivors of cults or for high controlled groups. That could be a high controlled marriage, right? Mm. And this is a safe space and a community that really helps you rise and heal through resources, through group counseling, through trauma healing workshops, through trauma healing retreats. So I am in the infant stages of building this thing, but I am so excited. The landing page is up, and so you can sign up to be part of the community. As of today, it went live, so I'm really, really excited. This feels like my birth child, right? Like this is something that this is my way to give back. This is my way to create community. This is my way to go to other people and their groups and say, I understand. I've been there. This cult for a long time has always been a bad word or a yucky, like when I would say cult, everyone's like, like it's always, I always feel like a circus freak or like an enigma, like no, like, because most people have never heard that somebody was in a cult, but cults are way more pervasive in our world than we are aware of. There's 3,000 cults just in the United States alone, which means that if there's 300 people in every cult out there, like there was in my cult, and there's many more in many cults, right?
Wow.
Just think about the number of people that have left cults, that feel stuck, that feel angry, that feel abused, that feel traumatized, that feel devastated, and they don't have anybody to relate to them, right? Their healthcare professionals don't relate to them because they've never dealt with somebody from a cult. The brainwashing's different, the control's different, the isolation's different. This place understands you because we've all been through it, right? So I want to create this safe haven sanctuary for people to come to connect with one another, to connect with a community, to connect with resources, right? I will have all of the modalities that I have tried. I don't prescribe modalities because everybody heals differently. What works for me may not work for them, right? So I have a very detailed list of the things that I tried that worked for me. And then people can pick and choose. We can talk about what's the best way to try the first thing for them, right? Because there's things that go really deep, and then there's things that you have to start with to peel away the superficial levels in order to get to the deep work. So Cult X is going to be an all-in hub platform to support this specific community. And I'm so excited and really, really proud to be putting this out.
I love it. I think that sounds so amazing. So it's an online community, and will there be what kind of structures in place for it? I mean, to help, is it just people join, and is it like in a group format, or is it one-on-one, or how?
Yeah, so it'll be a combination of all of there'll be different tiers. There'll be a membership tier if you would like. There'll be the ability to create workshops and retreats for me to come to you or for a team to come to you, or to do it all online. There'll be different tiers in different ways for you to get involved. There'll be a free, way to get involved. For me, it's more important that you feel like you have somewhere to go than it is for me to, make a ton of money, right? Like this is a passion project for me. Of course, I'm running a business as well, but this is a passion project. Like I want people to have a safe place to go. And that's why I'm creating this.
I love it. I love it. And you're so right. It's such an unusual kind of subset of people, and they probably don't feel very represented. They're going to need some real help. And I know they're definitely more prevalent than we realize, because there's that factor of isolation. So nobody even knows about it, which is huge. It's crazy. I think I have read one other cult book before I read yours, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this stuff actually happens. And it does, and it's so hard for people to get out of that situation. And there's so many instances in life, if you're changing gears, going into something new, there's this discomfort of being free, I guess, because it's not what you're even used to. So there is definitely some great work I feel that you're going to be doing for people. So I'm super excited for you about that.
Thank you. I am stoked. It feels like everything that I've healed through has prepared me for this moment, to be able to offer something back, to be able to give back, and to be able to support, right? Like I didn't have that support coming out of the cult. And so it's so important for me to be able to give that support to others, because I know that I can't be the only one that's gotten out of a cult and felt unsupported. In fact, I know that's true, because I have spoken to people from my own cult that are like, I've never heard these things before. Like, I don't have to stay stuck. I don't have to always feel abandoned. I don't always have to feel like I'm always being triggered by something. And the answer is no. Like, there is healing to be had, but you have to go inward.
Yes, absolutely. So you also speak, and then I know that you just got back from Iceland. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that. And it was a speakers retreat, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
I'd love to hear about
I had
that.
the beautiful opportunity of going on a speakers retreat, and we went to Iceland. I've had the opportunity to go all over the world, but this was a different kind of experience. Anytime that I get the option or the opportunity to be able to really step into my power and be able to share and be able to ignite hope and light in others, that's what I want to do. Like, my number one mission is to leave the world better than I found it. And so any opportunity that I get to do that, I jump on board. And Iceland was just a beautiful experience of a completely different world. Like, the scenery is amazing, but the people that I ended up meeting, just my heart. So I'm so lucky that I get the opportunity to do this. And so, yes, I get to speak, and it feels very special every time I get to do it, whether it's going to Nashville or going to Podunk in North Dakota, or it's going to Iceland. I'd love to get to share. So
Yeah,
hit me
that's
up.
amazing. Well, it doesn't matter where you go. You're just spreading your message across the world and around the US. It doesn't really matter where it is, but people need to know what is going on. So we still have a couple of minutes, but I just wanted to have your website down there because you're also available for healing. You're obviously, we have the new baby that you launched with the Cult X. I love that. Any other big plans that you've got going on in the future? I mean, I'm sure this new thing is going to take quite a bit of your time, but now that you have the ability to dream about what Martha can create, what do you think would happen in the future?
So I have a list like this long of goals and
Great.
aspirations, but I'm writing another book.
Oh, amazing.
Yes, and so I'm very excited about that. But I'm also really I published my own book this time, or I went through self-publishing. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm really looking to go mainstream this time. I think that the message is powerful, and I think that it will be able to impact more if I go the main publishing route. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for that opportunity as well, and working really hard on a proposal to move in that direction, and maybe even to put Glory out again. So we'll see. So that's writing my books, and I have another passion project that I'm working on, which is collectively putting cult stories together from survivors,
Oh.
and just in doing kind of an anthology called Deliverance. Which is something that I'm just super, super stoked about, because that kind of fell in my lap. And there's so many stories that deserve to be shared. Cult or not cult, like, everybody has a story, and our
Mm-hmm.
stories are our power, and our stories are our message. And so, yes, I'm focusing on this specific niche because this is my background, but
Mm-hmm.
everybody has a story. So when I speak, I don't just speak to cult groups. I speak to other professionals. I speak to schools. I speak to women's groups. I speak to church groups, because we all have this message of understanding that your story matters. You matter. You matter to me. You matter to your community, but you matter to God. And so the more that we are able to look inward and say, are we the healthiest, happiest versions of ourselves, or do we have work to do? That's the kinds of questions that I really try to focus on, and I really want to bring light to. So yes, when you say I want to bring light and love to everywhere I go, that's my mission, whether it's on the cult front or it's just getting to speak to anywhere that God takes me.
Well, you sounds like you're up to so many amazing things. What do you do in your personal life for fun, to relax and unwind?
In my personal time, it's usually something family oriented. I have 11 nieces and nephews. I have 9 brothers and sisters, and my parents. And so it's usually focused around family, but anything outdoors is where my heart is. So I'm lucky enough to live in North Carolina, where the mountains are on one side and the ocean's on the other side. And so
Nice.
there's always something to do. But I love being outside, because there's so much beauty in everything that God's created, everything from every single sunrise and every single sunset, to just knowing that there's fresh air for us, because not every place in the world has fresh air. And so I really try not to take anything for granted. And I love filling my own cup with a walk or with, just yoga. I take care of myself so that I can overflow for others.
I'm so glad you said that, because sometimes when other people watch people like you or I who are on a mission, we look like we are busy, but there's this balance between self-care and the busy that makes the machine be able to produce more. And, this was a mistake I made in my medical career, not knowingly, but there was no time. I was working 100 and something hours a week, and it was constantly stressful. So I gave up self-care. There was no time for it. I didn't even know what it was. But what I do differently this time around is my body and my spirit knows when some sort of self-care is off kilter, and I immediately know how to fix that little issue, and I address it when it's a little issue rather than when full-blown burnout occurs. So, I know that you seem so very grounded and whole, that you have very effective self-care practices, because with what you do, it requires a lot of heart and soul, and it's emotional. If you don't take care of yourself, there's no way you could put out into the world. So this is my little, I love talking about self-care. So I like how I worked that into the conversation. But
it's so important.
It's so important, especially for women who tend to, the first thing they do when they get busy is neglect self-care. So I urge all of you, men and women alike, to never neglect self-care, because our best version really comes with us taking care of ourselves. So I'm glad that you not only, you're modeling it, you're doing it. So that is just amazing.
Yeah. I can't take care of others if I don't take care of myself. And that's literally what it comes down to, is I have to take care of me first so that I can give from my overflow. Because if not, we become deficit, which means that we're going to lack. And so I refuse to do that now. I have to take care of me so that I can continue to take care of others.
It's so perfect. And I do the same thing. I mean, if I feel like anything is off, I will spend whatever time I need to make sure I am okay, which was something I wasn't aware of 20 years ago at all. So, I'm glad that I'm in a different position now, and that you are too. So thank goodness for that. Thank goodness for healing journeys, right? Because after the healing journey, this is the after of the healing journey. The before, well, that wasn't so pretty.
Yeah.
But I so am appreciative for all the beautiful things that you're doing out there for people who are really struggling with these issues. It's such a specific niche that, I'm glad that it's being served and that you have the capability to do that for these people. And it just is a real pleasure. I mean, I'm grateful that you sent me a copy of your book, that I had the chance to read it and understand better. So, I'd love to, have you on again, maybe after some time passes. I love doing these sequels after we've had a guest on, because my guests constantly are creating. So, 6 months, 8 months, a year from now, who knows what you'll be up to. So it'd be great to reconnect.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time and for your platform today and your audience. I am just so grateful.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. You have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Bye. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. It just gives me, it just makes me feel so warm in my heart to watch that somebody's gone through these kind of things and just so lovingly and so in such a heart open way just gives back to the world. So I just was very touched by that. And I definitely would love to have her on again. I'd love to see how Cult X progresses over the next, several months or a year. And I definitely will keep you guys in tune. So next week, I'm going to have Joe McKinley on. And Joe is a financial advisor, but he's so much more than that. It's funny how we will equate a certain persona or personality to people because of their professions. And so I like to bring people on that, we may have some preconceived notion about, and then show you that they can be so different. So I'm not going to tell you too much about it, but, he's somebody I've known for quite some time and, had a very interesting journey into what he's doing now. So we will deep dive into that conversation next week. But until then, I'm so grateful for you joining and watching Gloves Off every week. If you know anybody you think would enjoy the show, please let them know how to tune in. Otherwise, you have a happy Sunday, and I'll see you next week on Gloves Off.